Welcome, everyone. My name is Bill Froehlich, and I'm the director of the Divided Community Project, and I'm delighted to welcome so many of you here today from across the country. I saw friends from Cleveland, I saw friends from Hawaii, and many places in between. The Divided Community Project, it supports communities that are seeking to identify and address issues tearing at their respective social fabrics. We're modeled in a way after CRS, and one of our colleagues here on the screen, Grande, was our first director and a former director of CRS. The Divided Community Project believes that many organizations and communities have the capacity to address civil rights, peacemaking, and conflict resolution, to address issues tearing at communities' social fabrics, not just in the V of civil litigation, but to communities as a whole. And we think there are layers in which folks can approach community-wide conflict, from CRS, as Grande has done in the past, from statewide offices, on a local level through cities or peace projects or community mediation centers, and also through academic institutions or nonprofit institutions like the Divided Community Project or OSU. And so today's event focuses on the infrastructure of civil rights, peacemaking, and conflict resolution. And we hope today to present some illustrations and critical lenses of this work, because the Divided Community Project believes that now, more than ever, this work in community is bringing communities together, identifying and addressing differences and challenges is so critically important. Indeed, today's event builds on a 2022 conversation called Building Infrastructure, where Nancy Rogers, former Attorney General for the state of Ohio, spoke with then DOJ CRS Director Paul Montero. I just dropped that link into the chat for you. You're welcome to look at it as you see fit. Today, we are hoping to illustrate community-focused civil rights, peacemaking, and conflict resolution through a variety of perspectives and lenses. So the Divided Community Project is really excited to host this and all of you on this session today. We're hosting it in collaboration with the Stanford Law School Martin Daniel Gould Center for Conflict Resolution and the National Association for Community Mediation, or NAFCM. Of course, we're thrilled to have financial support for this event from the Mershon Center for International Security Studies here at the Ohio State University, as well as our partners at the James Foundation. So as we begin, I'd like to get a sense of who's listening in and from where. I want to go over a few quick logistics, introduce everyone featured in the conversation, and go over the agenda. So if you don't mind, if you can, in the chat, we'd love to know where you're zooming in from. So perhaps if I were Grande, I would write Stanford. If I were Sharice Hairston, I'd write Dayton, Ohio. That would be great if you could pop that into the chat, or you could put it into the Q&A function if you can access that as well. So, some logistics. We're recording this event, and we will distribute the recording to everyone who registered for this event online. So we ask that you don't record yourself. You'll get our recording down the road. Also, I want you to feel free to use the Q&A liberally. We're going to get to Q&A towards the end of the conversation. The questions and answers that you send us, we're going to try to address in the last 25 to 30 minutes of the conversation. All right. So I want to make sure that we introduce everyone here. There's a bunch of us featured in this conversation. In fact, there are 4 facilitators. So let me introduce you to them now. First is myself and Grande from Stanford Law School and a former director of the Department of Justice Community Relations Service. We also have Jamila Mindingall from the South Fulton Community Mediation Center, where she is the inaugural or founding director of that mediation center outside Atlanta, Georgia, as well as Mia Bowers, who's the director of community mediation in St. Mary's County, which is in Maryland. So thank you, Mia, Jamila, and Grande, for co-facilitating with me today. On to the meat of the conversation, the exciting part. We have 5 wonderful thought partners here today to introduce who are going to be featured in this conversation. The first is Jen Dreiske. Jen is the Chief Operating Officer with South Dakota Voices for Peace, an organization that provides support in a variety of ways in communities across South Dakota. She's also an interfaith chaplain at Augustana University. Today, she's going to be discussing South Dakota Voices for Peace work in Sioux Falls following a series of hate incidents. Next, Nadine, Tafoya, and Kee Straits. They're in the same room. That's lovely. We'll discuss their work and practice with Indigenous communities. Kee is an Indigenous Latina psychologist who provides consultation and facilitation with Native and Latinx communities. Nadine is Mescalero Apache. She's spent her career working to improve health and mental health conditions in tribal communities. Both Kee and Nadine are based in New Mexico and lead TLC Transformations. Finally, Cherise Hairston and Teni-Ola Ogunjobi will discuss the opportunities and challenges of community mediation centers, specifically in the context of community-focused mediation and facilitation, how to engage with communities beyond the court system. Cherise is the Dayton Mediation Center's volunteer coordinator, where she mediates and facilitates. And Teni-Ola recently completed her PhD at Kennesaw State University, where her research focuses on the decolonization of mediation, and she leads the Intercultural Communities Project. I'm going to drop their links into the chat when they start talking, so you can look a little bit more about their biographies. But let's get started here today without further ado. And to do that, Grande and I are going to have conversations with some of our thought partners, and then we're going to turn it over to Jamila and Mia to have a conversation with all of the thought partners. And then the last 20 minutes or so, we'll take questions from the audience. So to get started, I apologize, I didn't spotlight everyone. So there's Cherise and there's Teni-Ola. I apologize about that. To get started, I'm going to remove my spotlight as well as Jamila and Mia and Teni-Ola. Just takes a second, and I'm going to turn it over to Grande Lum to begin the conversation with Jen Dreiske. Grande, go ahead.
Thank you, Bill. It's a pleasure to be a co-sponsor of this session. It is a privilege to be in the room with the facilitators, moderators, and panelists, and to have so many familiar faces in the now 83 attendees that we're here. So without any further ado, it's a pleasure to be in conversation with Jen Dreiske, who is with the South Dakota Voices for Peace. And I just really want to turn over to you, Jen, to just give a little bit of flavor of your paper, Safety in Action, Making Community Protection a Verb. As a person who used to love sentence diagramming, I appreciate your highlighting of grammar here as well. But you tell a very moving story of what happened to the neighborhood market in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and the response of South Dakota Voices for Peace. You know, my sense, having been at CRS and having worked very closely with the incredibly wonderful Rosa Salamanca, who is a regional director for Community Relations Service, who Jen worked with, I think you really tell a terrific story about the rapid response, about the allyship, about the rallying with them. So I just want to let you tell the story for, we have about 10 minutes, maybe for 3 minutes or so that can really set the table for us. So Jen, take it away.
Sure, thank you. We at South Dakota Voices for Peace follow different businesses on our social media platforms, and that morning I happened to see the videos that the storekeepers were sharing of the vandalism that had happened moments before. And at that moment, I did a call out to different community members, including different faith community members, and in collaboration with Startup Sioux Falls. And we brought people to the market and helped clean up the devastation and to try to provide solace to the store owners. And within a matter of a couple hours, we were able to get the store cleaned up, all the broken glass, broken windows, all the things, and be able to bring the news in and have the news media come in to do a story and interview people. The people who showed up to do the cleaning and the restoring, they were people from the Muslim community, the Jewish community, and the Christian community. So we had a great showing of people of all faiths and backgrounds coming together very quickly in a rapid response to let the halal market know that they are a cherished presence in our community. And then after that, CRS, Rosa, she has a long relationship with South Dakota Voices for Peace. And so we communicated with her with what had happened to the store. And in talking to her, we came together, brought forth an idea of having a hate crime forum at the store in the restaurant. And that's where we brought in local leaders of law enforcement and invited business leaders in the community to come to be able to hear the stories of our BIPOC immigrant refugee owned businesses and to start the relationship with local law enforcement.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for that, Jen. And, you know, in reading your article, this wasn't a one-off situation. They had been threatened several times. There had been vandalism 3 or 4 times in 1 year. There was a gasoline station that they also owned that was right next door that had also been vandalized here. And the rapid response, I think, is so important. I mean, having been on the ground when I was in CRS at, say, at Ferguson after the shooting of Michael Brown, or in Baltimore after Freddie Gray, to see the community rally around is so important. Given that the theme of this session is really around issues of cultural humility and trust and the distinctiveness, I'd be curious that, you know, how for South Dakota Voices for Peace, when you guys started in 2017, how did cultural humility thrive in your work with the Muslim community here?
Just being curious, staying curious, and asking non-judgmental questions to learn more, and really opening up our ears to hear what the people were saying and what they need so that we can provide that instead of making assumptions of what people need. We took the time to hear what the storekeepers needed to get off their chest, and it was through tears, it was through hugs, it was through staying with them until they felt like they could take a breath on their own.
Yeah. No, that's I'm so appreciative of your answer. There is this trauma that happens instantly, and you're not even, you know, sometimes you can be paralyzed, or sometimes you want to lash out, and all these things. And how do you work with a community and take a breath? I do appreciate your answer around curiosity, around questions. A lot of this, as you know, we all got together with the facilitators and with the panelists, and how important listening is in all the work that you do. You know, you talk a lot about you use the words community protection, and I was struck by that. How do you for those of us who do this work, for the panelists here who do this work as a career, as a calling, the question I often come to is the sustainability of it, right? You started in 2017. How do we make sure that community protection as a verb continues over time versus the ebb and flow, the natural ebb and flow that happens with these situations?
It's building the relationships and being intentional with our consistency. And it's showing up. Your presence says more than many words that we can say. And so what we did was we had staff meetings in the grocery store, then afterwards in the restaurant. We invited people to come to the store to shop for foods that maybe they've never heard of before, and giving guidance to non-Muslims of what to expect walking into the store, and how, you know, people don't know what they don't know, and they have their own biases. And how do you inspire and spark that curiosity so that people can show their presence. And that's what we really reiterated with law enforcement too, is just showing up for a cup of coffee and letting people know in the community that you are there. That's pretty easy to do and doesn't take a lot of effort. But we were talking about the really little things and not overthinking too many things.
Okay, good. Thank you. You know, you talk about law enforcement, you talk about communities, talk about the non-Muslim community. You know, I've been to Sioux Falls many years ago. I was also in Aberdeen, which was really cold, if I remember, as I remember it. Um, you know, you write about you have to make sure to include, not just to be included, but to belong. And I was impressed when I read your article about you bringing in like the president of Startup Sioux Falls, the local media, the GoFundMe. How do you work with that, right? In a polarized world that we live in, where there is anti-Muslim and there is hate going on in these communities. Clearly, there's people who support that too. How do you? It just strikes me as incredibly important to bring in people that the people in the broader community, the non-Muslim community, are supportive and voice it. You talk about the importance of voicing concern, the importance of taking a stand. So tell us a little bit more about what it was like there in Sioux Falls, in working with the belonging issue and working with those who may not be, who might not be supportive of the work that you're doing. Or I'm just curious.
We really emphasize giving our efforts to the victims or the people that are impacted by the hate.
Mhm.
We don't spend a lot of time negotiating or talking to the people that are exhibiting the hate. If they are doing it in a public setting, there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to change their mind.
Mhm.
So my job is to be there for the victims.
Yeah.
And I'm also modeling that behavior in the community and where other people can see, oh, I can do that too. Because some people think to disrupt hate is to possibly get into a shouting match or get into a situation where you two are bullied. But it's really showing that we can do it another way, and we focus on the victim to bring them into belonging and to let them know that we saw this, we heard this, name it. Don't spend time dancing around because you don't want to be politically incorrect.
Mhm.
Um, and then acknowledge the emotions that people are going through and then ground people in the truth and let them know the resources that are there to help them.
Thank you. I mean, the acknowledgement, the modeling, the just speaking the truth, those resonate with me. I'm also on the board of Not in Our Town, which does this does this type of work here. That's deeply appreciated. I know we have probably about what 2 minutes left here, give or take. I want to make sure you have the last word, Jen. So why don't you go ahead and say what is it that you want to make sure people understand, what drove you to write this article, and what are your hopes as we think about community conflict resolution, civil rights, peacemaking?
That we all have a role to play in creating communities of belonging. And maybe we will say the wrong thing, maybe we will screw up, but we do need to step into that brave space and of advocacy to be there for community and get out of our heads and if we screw up then we apologize and but we move towards making that concerted effort of creating spaces of belonging.
Well, thank you, Jen. It's been wonderful to be in conversation with you, and thank you for all the work that you're doing there in South Dakota, and for sharing with all of us, the attendees today, with your story, and appreciate the importance of documenting it. That's what I would say. So many of these stories need to be written so that they can be conveyed. So thank you, Jen. Back to you, Bill.
Oh, thanks, Grande. And thanks, Jen, for getting us started. It looks like I might have frozen for a second, so I apologize about that. Go figure. But what a great way to start things from South Dakota, Jen. We're really grateful for your being here today. I'm delighted to talk to Nadine, Tafoya, and Kee Straits for a little bit here this afternoon. Both have been facilitating conversations with Indigenous and Native communities in New Mexico and beyond for decades. Nadine, I was captivated when I read your short article, Rage is Not an Option, an Indigenous Woman's Path, in that text a couple of years ago. And in our conversations for this event, you both described and shared a circle of 5 components for conflict resolution, trust building, and relationships. I'm going to put that on the screen share real quick. And I wonder if you all might share more about the components of this circle as you've described it previously. Nadine, Kee?
Thank you, Bill, and welcome everybody. We're glad to be in this space with you today. I am Nadine Tafoya. I am a Mescalero Apache tribal member, and I live in a tribal community, the Pueblo of Santa Clara, with my husband and family. And I just, the first thing that you see on this graphic is historical knowledge. And it's been my experience as a practitioner, a facilitator, a trainer, that many non-native people, from the Western society, don't really understand or know or are aware that tribal communities still exist. We're here in this land. We live, work, play in various states and environments. And sometimes people say, oh, I didn't know that Native Americans still are here in this country. And so we wanted to begin by just talking a little bit about who we are as Native people. And we're using the term indigenous, tribal, Indian, Native. These are terms that we use within our own community, but we're talking about the original inhabitants of this land we call Turtle Island. So to begin with, I just want to briefly ask you to just picture early morning scenario in a tribal home where the family is gathered for breakfast, maybe running a little late, getting coffee, grabbing a tortilla and an egg and heading out the door, because today is a celebration, today is a ceremony, and the family is getting ready to participate in this ceremony. And so they're donned in their best festive regalia, their ribbon shirts, their moccasins. They have their sacred items that they take to the community square where the ceremony will take place. And so there's a lot of hustle and bustle, and everybody is celebrating because the ceremony occurs maybe several times throughout the year, celebrating various seasons of the year. And so tribal communities are based on these ceremonies, based on the seasons of the year, based on the environment that they come from, whether they're from the Northwest and celebrate the fishing season, whether they come from the Pueblo land and celebrate the agricultural bounty of the land there. But we're of the land, and we use the land in our language, in our everyday activities. So our ancient traditions, our language, our songs, our stories are based on this historical knowledge. And so if you're going to work in a tribal community, it's best that you understand that this historical knowledge is very front and center in our lives.
Beautiful. I'll add on to that, and I'll talk a little bit more about historical knowledge, but move us into the listening section as well. Noka Sutimi Maria Waman Kispe Jill Elizabeth Straits. I just introduced myself in Quechua. And I have been honored to work with Nadine Tafoya for many, many years now and have learned so much from her. And I want to build on what she's saying about the importance of just giving you a little bit of context first about Indigenous communities. because we realized that, there's only 1% of the entire United States that identifies as Native or Indigenous, and that's fairly small around the rest of the United States, but there's pockets where Native communities are very prevalent. So here in New Mexico, it's about 10 to 12% of the communities here. So there's a very different experience. And what Nadine shared was a little bit of a picture of both traditional ceremony that have been going on for generations upon generations, but also in our current living situation. So people are coming out in their jeans and their white man's moccasins, which are our tennis shoes, and we got our cell phones in our pockets. We're, drive our Ford truck or whatever to go to ceremonies. There's very much also American life that we see all over TV in general too, but it's all mixed, it's mixed together. And one of the big differences is how long so much of the traditional aspects of Indigenous living have gone on, and been passed on, even despite colonization, which came in 1492. And the initial onslaught was with disease that wiped out so many of our Indigenous communities across the Americas before even seeing the first colonizers. And then from there were wars, and from there was land grabs, a forced removal from lands, taking away our rights to our own spiritual beliefs and traditions, breaking down the original communities and arrangements of communities, and forcing Native peoples into particular ways of living, into particular ways of even arranging themselves in community settings, which also took away a lot of our traditional ways of resolving conflicts in communities. And as much as that experience of colonization has happened over generations as well, it didn't eradicate all of these rich traditions that we've carried for so long. They had to go underground a bit, and across our tribal communities, which are very diverse throughout the United States, we've done a lot of sharing. So bringing back to the present, even though I have my doctoral degree in clinical psychology, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And so I've spent many years in education, Western education settings. In my backyard is a sweat lodge, and that is the traditional Native spirituality. And it symbolizes the womb of Mother Earth. So as Nadine talks about our connection to land, that is ongoing in so many ways of expression that are still very strong today. So when we go to pray in what Western communities might deem a church, it would be in our sweat lodge, which is traditionally made of mud, and where we put rocks in and we heat them up so that when we enter in a certain direction, and we sit around those rocks, which are our grandfathers. We acknowledge them as our grandfathers because they've been here before time and witnessed everything. And that heat that is generated from those rocks, it helps to get us to sweat, and that purifies us. And even though Indigenous communities have been doing this around the world for many centuries, generations, it's only recently in scientific studies that it's shown that actually this kind of sweating does release toxins and does help with the process of healing. And so part of that is our connection to Earth. A part of it is forming that community and being in this circle together. But one of the biggest things that I've found in these spaces, and when I see Native youth, especially coming into these spaces, because they will talk about some of the struggles they have in like in school or in work settings, and coming into this space that is sacred and that is transformed, there's a sense, or our Native youth have said, I actually feel like I'm being listened to. And that's part of what makes it such a sacred space and such a healing space is that we spend that time deeply, deeply listening to each other, not telling someone what to do, not telling them how to feel, not telling them what's right or wrong, simply merely being with each other and listening as we go around in that circle.
So I would love to hear more about how you all mentioned in one of our prep conversations, listening with your ears, eyes, and hearts, and what that looks like to listen deeply. And we could start our 4-hour, 4-credit class that we're teaching on the how Indigenous knowledge has been ignored and now is rediscovered. But maybe we should stick with listening for the moment and turn back to the rediscovery of Indigenous knowledge if we have time later. Nadine?
Yes, and so that the listening piece is like one of the foundational pieces, the cornerstone of building relationship with the people, the tribal community, because they, you know, for generations, their wants and needs and voices have been ignored. And we sometimes refer to colonization as a time when we were invisible. Our needs and wants were just not heard by the oppressor. And so we were invisible. And if you think of that history of Native people in this country, you can think of the times when there was removal from the homelands of the indigenous people. Many indigenous tribes were moved from east to west, and then from west to south, and displaced from their homelands where the lands were sacred to them, where their ancestors were. And so they were displaced, they were removed, they were placed in areas that were sometimes inhospitable to their lifestyle. But we're still here, we've thrived, we've survived, we've regained our culture, our traditional ways, and we've maintained that. And so we're able to live in two worlds, we say. We're able to live in our traditional world, and we're able to live in the modern world as well. But we keep these sacred spaces intact and practice our culture on a daily basis. And so that's important because when one is learning about working with tribal communities, that's one thing that you really have to understand, is that connection to the land and the place and the historical knowledge. And in that way, when you acknowledge that, you build that trust, you build the relationship. And then the people want to know, who are you? What do you bring to the table? What is your people like? What was your history like? And so then we begin to form some relationship together. And so the one thing that I wanted to emphasize is that we pass this information down from generation to generation. This is knowledge that has been passed on from grandfathers, from grandmothers to the current generation, and that they have passed on this knowledge and this information. And this is wisdom that the younger generation reveres, because they know that this wisdom comes from experience. This wisdom comes from even the prayers that were offered to the deities and the spirits. And so that these lessons are lessons that we're supposed to learn in this lifetime and to pass along to the way to live our life. And this is the foundation of our peacemaking circles. And so peacemaking has occurred again for generations upon generations. This isn't anything new to us. conflict resolution. We call it peacemaking. We call it forming peace circles. And the foundation of this peacemaking, of these circles, is that trust building, is that relationship to each other. And that's one thing that we wanted to emphasize in what we talk about in our paper is this can't be rushed. This takes time. It's a process. And sometimes, it's hard to allow the time to build these relationships, to build that trust. But in a tribal community, that is a cornerstone of building a strong, successful relationship.
I'll add just a little bit more on the listening because it's so essential. Time is a huge piece of that. And then you also, Bill, referred to that heart connection piece that we had talked about. Something that we see when Western trained folks try and come in and work with Native communities is that there's sort of a perception of listening that feels like they already know, or it's sort of an exercise in helping others, but not necessarily, it's more of like a thought process of, oh, I have to listen for details versus emotional, relational process of, oh, I want to connect with you and we want to be in relationship. That's a completely different level of listening that is from the heart, that's from spirit, that brings in emotion. It brings in our entire physical being along with our thought processes. And then the aspect of time, I think, is huge. It's one of the biggest things that Nadine and I have gone to battle with for when we have funders or other places that are trying to work with Native communities to be able to expand the time given, because there's always these deadlines that are very artificial based on the clock. Whereas in Native communities, it's much more seasonal, spiritual time. There's a different structure to government, who's the ones who are perceived as the leaders in the communities, and when it's right to speak and when it isn't. That is very much based on relationships with each other, and that real, deep, true, heart-based listening takes time. It takes a lot of time, and it needs to be willingness to take that time.
Yeah. Thank you both. I have so many questions, and I'm sure our audience does as well. And I know we'll come back to some of these ideas and concepts, but I'm so grateful for your willingness to participate and share your voices here this afternoon. I'm going to turn it now to Grande, and Grande will continue the conversation with Teni-Ola and Charisse. So I'll add them to the spotlight.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Nadine and Kee, for that. It's such a reminder, the approach taken to how do you get heartfelt listening. I mean, I think that makes so much sense, and I really appreciated, really loved how you talked about the sweat lodge. Well, science has actually proven it right, that it really, and that's, so there is just such wisdom in practices, and it's the work of what all of us as peacemakers are trying to do. So it is very much my privilege to be in conversation with Charisse Hairston and with Dr. Teni-Ola Ogunjobi here. And we have about 15 minutes, and we're going to try to make sure to give as much space to both of you as possible here. So with that, let me start with Charisse Hairston, who is a volunteer coordinator and a longtime mediator and facilitator at the Dayton Mediation Center. She's going to talk about career or calling, which I think for many, it probably resonates with probably everybody in this room, that there is some sort of magic that comes from doing this work. How do you bottle the magic to make it a career? And listening is one. In our previous conversation, preparation for this, it struck me as well. And of course, I think many of us are familiar with the work you've all done at mediators going to 911 calls instead of police officers here, and I'm sure you'll talk about that, but also in the much bigger picture of all the work. So without any further ado, Sharice, I want to turn to you.
Well, thank you, Gran, and I was so deeply touched by Nadine and Kee talking about who they are and what's behind their work, and having done a Western approach to community mediation for a good long time, but transitioning to a approach and model that has a deep philosophical an explicit value system that shapes it. It's very much in alignment with what Kee and Nadine have been talking about, the relationship building aspect. And so I didn't know that when I first got into the field, going on 28 years ago, when I started my graduate program. Um, Conflict resolution and mediation sounded like I could make a livable wage with that, but I didn't really know anything about the field. And as luck would have it, and I didn't even know we had a local community mediation center here in Dayton. And so I really got my start by just diving into the field, not really knowing anything about it, and diving in from an academic perspective, because I did a graduate degree in conflict resolution, which, if you really think about it, it's kind of a risky, risky thing to do, because we really don't have a really solid, I don't think, career path. And so I set about trying to make a career path. And so I think what I found along the way and what I want to um, share with folks here today is just how powerful this work is. And we've gotten a wonderful um, glimpse of that with Jen and Nadine and Kee, and Teni-Ola will certainly share her experiences. But there's something really special about this work in a Western perspective at the community mediation level. Very different from court-connected mediations, very different from what I would say the field really has developed over the years. And I think always at the heart of Community Mediation Center is exactly what Nadine and Kee are talking about, is the relationship building and the ability as practitioners who are volunteers and who are full-time staff to really get what we're about. And so um, what I didn't know is that this was exactly where I belonged. We were talking about belonging and having a place to belong, and I'd always been looking for a place to belong. And I found that in community mediation. And 28 years later, what I know is that other folks, my colleague Mia here is one of the facilitators. What we know is that we're really passionate about this work, and we're all passionate about this work. And I think that passion for helping people have a way to have a space where they can talk about their conflict situation, which we all know is very destabilizing. It really is. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever go through. Um, and to have someone that gets that and can be present with you and really listen to what you need, that's what I found. And I didn't know that that was really my passion, to help people be seen and heard, and to help people in a way that they really needed and wanted, not what I thought as the practitioner acting upon. And so much of our Western approach to conflict resolution has been coming into communities and acting upon them and not listening to communities. And community mediation centers, I think we do a good job of being grounded in the community and really listening and trying to offer us a service, whether it be mediation, conflict coaching, which is what I do a great deal of, and coaching, facilitating, helping people come together in dialogues. When we really get to the heart of that, it's our presence and how we do that, and we create this space. And so, in a nutshell, this can be both a career and a calling. I think, unfortunately, even some 50, 60, 70 years later, I think it's a risky gamble, and that's unfortunate. Because some of the challenge of our work is the sustainability of it. Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to fund it? And so certainly that's a challenge. And I think that the folks that are doing the work now, we really are driven by some deep beliefs in providing people with constructive ways to engage conflict. So I'll take a breath there because I know you'll ask me a wonderful question because you're such a wonderful listener. So
I hope so. So one question, and I want to make sure we're going to turn
yes.
Teni-Ola, and then we'll have a broader conversation together here. You know, this is a time when we in this country, in this world, you know, we're desperately in needing of listening here,
Yes.
right? People are not, we want to cancel each other rather than listen to each other at this moment. This has come across different spectrum, political, racial, in different ways. How do you think, you know, this session's around what's unique and different, how we can't just do cookie cutter stuff, right? And you just said how you didn't even realize there's all this other, you know, talk circles and indigenous knowledge, and from all different cultures, there's wonderful approaches to peacemaking. What's different about this moment, and how do we as a field, or we, you know, you've had so many people here have had so much experience with it. What is the call for us today?
You know, the call for us today, I think, you know, we still need to make people aware that we exist, that we're a resource if you happen to have one in your community. But I think the call for us as a field, quote, a field of, you know, conflict resolution, restorative justice, however you plant yourself in the field, the call is to really learn how to be present with people and to listen. And to have some what Peter Coleman talks about, intellectual humility, and also what we've been talking about, cultural humility. We are not the experts, the people are the experts in their lives, and we have to really get that as practitioners. We really have to get that the wisdom in the room, the wisdom in the space that we inhabit is with the people. And if and the humanizing, the experience of conflict is destabilizing for everyone, no matter whether you have a degree in this field or not. And so I think that's our call.
Thank you, Sharice. There is a humility, right? We, as much as we do the work, my spouse, my children, my friends, they hold me pretty accountable for what I do.
Right.
All of us, right? I'm sure. So thank you very much for that, and for your years of experience and wisdom here. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Teni-Ola Ogunjobi, and she's written a terrific paper. I know folks don't have it yet here, but it's Decolonizing Mediation, a reflection. You start off with a quote that really, you know, gets us going here. You quote Coy and Heaton about how community mediation in 60 years is more, quote, institutionalized and has undergone various degrees of co-option in its evolving relationship with the court system. So Teni-Ola, if I could turn to you to share your reflection on community mediation, and what are you calling for?
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it, Grant. So my research came about with the decolonization of mediation was basically wanting to look at how community mediation service providers were resourced. How were they, what was their capacity to do the work that they were doing? And basically, how were they even making it sustainable? And that also was related to the history, because honestly, I've been in an urban community my entire life and had never heard of community mediation from the community. I had only heard of it as it relates to maybe like a court case where a family would go in and need to do mediation for, you know, if they were divorcing or something like that. And so wanting to understand how that messaging or that information was not necessarily really amplified in communities, and wanting to also, like I said, understand source, like resources and what they were doing and how they were doing it, and not really looking at the actual mediation or the service itself and how they, you know, applied it to communities and provided the service, but also looking at like that administrative side of things, that how we can do this type of work. And so decolonization is really looking at a shift in perspective. You're looking at knowledge and power sources. What's that history? And a lot of times people in this field or just in nonprofit work or community-based work, they are so focused on doing the work, they don't look at a lot of the documentation behind it. There's not always documentation behind it even. So wanting to lay out that history, kind of expose that relationship for really what it is. And what I discovered was that there were the knowledge and power sources were related to funding and referral sources. And so mediation centers are doing their work through the funding that they receive and the referral services they receive to actually do cases. And so that ended up being majority based and judicial based resources. So from money from the government. And so with that in mind, you see that they're then limited to a lot of times doing cases that are from the court system. And so then that leaves them with little capacity to do work directly in the community. And that work to me looks like preventative, proactive work. And so it's like, all right, how are you able to address violence, conflict in communities before it reaches the court system or before it's processed through the court system? And so in order to do that, they would need funding and referral sources that allow them to have that balance. So that's kind of what my research is looking at. In this reflection, I give some major suggestions to community mediation centers or community mediation service providers on how they can do proactive work, how they can address conflict in communities before it hits the court system, and also even like garnering community support in their work, because the main thing with sustainability is that it has to belong to the community. It has to belong to the people who will sustain it long term. And so I'm from that family of like, how do you teach people how to fish and not just give them fish? And so I wanted to see, how do we do that? So in my research, I looked at 3 theories: decolonization theory, structural violence theory, and also conflict prevention theory. And the decolonization theory, as I mentioned, is looking at how do we rethink, how do we reject, how do we restructure this relationship that community mediation service providers are having with the court system. The structural violence theory is looking more so at how do you explore this relationship and look at some of the major challenges in this relationship as it relates to, structural violence. And just so people know kind of background on a little bit of structural violence, it was introduced in 1969 as this concept when you're looking at peace. So a lot of times people look at peace as the absence of direct like physical violence, but it's also the absence of indirect structural violence. And so structural violence can be caused by things like poverty, marginalization, exploitation. And so if you're thinking about
looks like Teni-Ola is frozen for
exploitation, you're thinking and a power imbalance based around the fact that there's this, you're providing this resource, so you get to say what you're doing with the resource, or you are only providing the resource to do, like, for example, the court was providing the resource to look at address cases that were coming through the court. And there was not funding enough to really do that work in communities before it hit the court system. And so it's like, how do we shift that? How do we change that? How do we empower community mediation centers to realize that they do have a power stance? Because judicial-based the court system, they need them just as much as they need the courts. And so realizing they have this power, realizing that they can demand more power in that relationship on how resources are being used, and ask for resources that allow them to address conflict before it reaches the court. Because at the end of the day, the court is trying to minimize the amount of people coming into the court system, the amount of cases. And so if you're doing more preventative, proactive work, then you're going to help with that as well. So just like, that's kind of what I'm overall looking at. And I give suggestions on how they can do that proactively, how they can address the conflict in communities before it reaches the court, and also garner support from the community to do it sustainably.
Thank you, Teni-Ola. I mean, your paper clearly goes through those three, right? In terms of structural violence, in terms of conflict prevention, in terms of decolonization theory here. I want to ask you one question, and then I want to actually invite Jamila and Mia to join us in the conversation as well here. I thought the end of your article, you wrote very powerfully about how we need to really think through strategic communication about how we need to rethink community conflict resolution. I think that's just true. I think, you know, we have 60 years. You point to the funding issue, a fundamental issue. You've got, right, to make this a career for anyone, there has to be funding. But the challenge has been the courts are the only ones funding it, and they're only funding like just in time or you know, downstream of the conflict here. And you talk about rethink. I do think we need a relaunch. I do think we need to think bigger in this moment for this field. So given your background, given you just wrote a doctoral dissertation on it, and you wrote about it toward the end of your article, what would you share with us? Like, well, how do we need to relaunch, rethink, and really get at, I think we have to look at it from the community or customers, you know, perspective. Like, what do we need to do to make it much bigger, to think about funding entirely differently, and to really, we have a magic, we have something. How do we then go about it in a new way going forward?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. So I have a communications background, community outreach type of work that I do. And I always tell people, you know, you think about it like people build it and they'll come. It's like, no, actually, that you have to talk about it and explain it to people and create a communications plan, a strategic communications plan and narratives around what you're doing and how you're doing it. And so that then helps people in communities or the target audience to understand, how can I utilize this resource in a really effective way? And first of all, just know that it's there, but also how do you use it? So giving people examples, really making strong relationships with community-based organizations who already have relationships with people in communities, the people who are actually going to stay longer than maybe a community mediation center or some of the staffers in that center. And so you want to link your work to other people doing work in communities, and you really want to mobilize people. You want to empower community leaders. You want to garner support from the local government, and, you know, collectively come together with other community mediation centers. I'm not sure if everybody understands how community mediation centers can be state funded. Like there can be a string of community mediation centers being funded through the state, but then there are also going to be standalone centers. And so understanding what that looks like in your state, understanding what the options are for requesting federal funding. And because at the end, if you look at what community mediation centers are supporting and combating, they're really doing the work of like post civil rights. They're doing the work of people who are of you know, to support communities that were you know, disenfranchised, and to look at what kind of work are we doing, who is it benefiting, and then how those people can come together to fund this kind of work, and being mindful of like the stakeholders in the community, doing community assessments. A lot of the research I was doing, I was looking for community assessments that were not there. There were no community assessments to look at the economic state, the communication state of things, the political state of things that relates to being effective in this work. And so I would say those things are extremely important. But the biggest thing is always like, what's this communication to people and the target audience and the state stakeholders that can come together and do this work? I just always think that there's miscommunication going on. There's like, you don't even know that this is an issue, or that it's relative to you, or that you could impact it in a positive way and make it sustainable. And so it's like, you know, doing that work of amplifying and coming together and being collective to be sustainable and effective in it.
Okay, thank you, Teni-Ola. Real important work that you're doing for us to think about. I appreciate the comment about stakeholders, state, connecting to other partners, connecting in a different way than we've done. So thank you both to Teni-Ola, and thank you to Straits. I want to invite, and they're on the screen for you already, Jamila and Mia, and to bring back Jen, Nadine, and Kee as well for the remainder of our time, so we can have a broader conversation. So thank you again, and Jamila and Mia, I turn the online moderation to you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Grande. Jamila, did you want to get us started?
I love these conversations because I take so many notes and there's so many things that come out, and I'm always so impressed by the work and what we don't know. But today I was listening for the common thread because each of you are doing different work in different areas. And what I heard to be the common thread is this idea of relationship or relations/relationship and community. And what really brought it together for me, and I'd love for you all to expound on it, is the Sharice, you said, plant yourself in the field. And you were talking about the work, but what I heard and what I saw in my mind was community, this idea of being in a field and being a part of it, not as an individual, but as a collective. And that led back to Kee and Nadine's conversation of the earth and the very beautiful visualization that you gave us of the sweat lodge and being there. And then Jen, your statement of this market is welcomed here. This is part of us. This is that fruit, that the harvesting of the fruit that we have planted. And so I'm curious to hear, ladies, how you, and I apologize, I should ask for pronouns before I make any assumptions. How do you see us collectively in our different areas pulling together and making sure that we present separate but together in community?
Nadine, please.
I'll go ahead and start the conversation. For me, as I practice in tribal communities, it's all about that energy that flows between each of us as we gather together. So in the sweat lodge, for instance, we're sitting on the ground right up against Mother Earth, and we're shoulder to shoulder. And we're listening to each other. We're listening to the wisdom of the elders that are in that circle. And there's an energy that is engulfing all of us in that circle. And when we give the time and the space to come together in relationship like that, the atmosphere changes. And you can either use that energy to be peaceful and calm. You can use that energy to enlighten and have people respond to their truths. You can use that energy in so many ways, but for me, it has to be within the circle. No matter where the circle takes place, it creates a dynamic energy that can be worked with.
Oh, that's excellent. And as we're discussing and talking today, Jamila, I heard the exact same themes that you heard, that community, and that creating a sense of belonging. And what I also heard was everyone really have a focus on listening. And just how important it is. Jen, you talked about listening without being judgmental and, showing up and telling people what to do, but really being there to listen to them and what they have going on. And, Sharice, when you're talking about the importance of creating that space and what happens in the space, right? Teni, when you talk about how we empower community leaders, well, we all know we empower people when we're listening, right? When we show up with our heart and we listen, and I love this so much. I wrote it down and underlined it. When we're listening to connect and we're listening with our ears, eyes, and heart, right? And so what got me thinking is, so we all are talking about listening, we're all great at it, but what are the challenges that we get, right? Because we can't get to community if we're not listening. And so as you're going out and you're doing that, what can you share about when you're getting those roadblocks to, one, getting people to trust that you're going to listen, And then two, if they have, you know what, I must leave it there because I think you're going to expound on your own. And that's for any of you.
Well, I think one of the main roadblocks that people face when it comes to being able to listen and to connect is to shut down the internal dialogue that we have going on in our heads. And that voice within that is saying what should happen or what we hope happen. And it is really being self-aware enough to be able to shut that part of the brain down so that you can be completely present in the moment, to be able to experience the energy and to be able to hear with your eyes, ears, and heart. So it's really important to practice being present in the moment. And that's a muscle that needs to be constantly worked on. And so I would suggest to any of us and all of us to do that on a daily basis.
I really appreciate the question and your response, Jen, because I think, this has really become my second passion, which I really think of, I call it the sacred art of listening. And it's sacred to honor the dignity and humanity of people by listening. And I think it's a skill that's sorely lacking among us as practitioners. And I think that, we're really called to do some of the really hard work of understanding our why of this work. And I think, particularly for community-based practice, it is about the community, and all people of the community belong, whether we agree with them, whether we like them or not. And if we're offering this service to them, I think we have to be grounded in showing, honoring, um, honoring them and their humanity. And so, if we can ground in that kind of deep reverence and respect for people, then it becomes easier to practice unselfing and unlearning all of the ways that our mind works so that we can really be present. And so I think that's the challenge. And I work at it every day. And when I go home, I'm just a terrible listener. And then I go, Sharice, wait a minute now. You got to walk the talk at home too. So, we've got to kind of ramp that up because our communities really need what we are offering. They really do.
I'd like
I
to
like that
add,
notion of building up of building up a muscle memory, right? That it becomes a reflexive thing. Because we were talking about how to convince other people to trust that we're going to listen to them. If we come in listening in the way that we're saying we're going to, it's going to be evident. Someone said earlier, I believe it was you, Jen, when you find that people start to ask with curiosity after you finish listening, then they're very curious about you, right? Because they now they're invested. That investment that we were talking about is there as well, and it's all surrounded by listening. I think it's a very powerful tool. I'm so sorry, Kee, were you about to say something?
yeah, I wanted to add on because you asked about the challenges and that trust is one of the huge barriers. And that ability to listen, it starts with like long term over time. And so I think another huge barrier is time and that it's not funded. There's not the resources put towards actually being able to listen. And the structures that we have right now for conflict resolution, like if we look at more of the courts way of resolving issues, it's about how quickly you can move through it and who's going to win and lose, which is not about actually listening and trying to change your relationship with folks. So I wanted to just bring in time is a huge barrier. And then one more piece, because and Teni-Ola, I really felt like you addressed that well about like the the resources and where the resources were actually going, and how power sort of can influence those resources. So how do we redirect it back to that ability to listen in the time that it takes? And then also just to bring up Jen's piece about our own biases that we come in with, and that this beautiful process that this community was able to do of like overcoming those biases, because I think those are a huge piece of our challenge of just our preconceived notions of each other, and what that means and how much work the community did to sort of move through those, and to, regardless of what those stereotypes are, to claim your neighbor as part of the community and that they belong, and you show that through your actions. So that, I thought it was a beautiful illustration of approaching that type of challenge of our own biases.
And I'll just say one quick thing, Keith, that was a great breakdown of it. But when you talked about trust, I also associated it with who has authority with community mediation or community resolution. And so a lot of times people, when I did my interviews, they were talking about the community and people seeing the court system as an authority on addressing conflict. And so that's where they would take it. And so it was kind of hard to garner that trust and rebuild that rapport with them and make them that authority to, community mediation centers, community mediation service providers as an authority to address this issue, right? And so building that authority element for communities, and then also giving communities language to talk about conflict as well, because a lot of times, again, you don't know who's the authority on handling the situation, but you also don't know what to say about the situation, the process, the steps, and all that stuff. So that's that. I'll just leave it there, but it definitely is who's an authority on addressing conflict resolution or supporting people with it, and why does it have to be, or why has it been in the past where a lot of people are going to the court? Are they, seeing police or something as an authority as opposed to a center who has 60 years worth of, experience in this work, and they can assess, support all the things. And so that's important.
Teni-Ola, thank you.
You're really talking about that. Oh, I'm so sorry, Jamila, please go.
Thank you for chiming in, and Kee, I felt like you were in my head because you pulled out the things, because I wanted to circle back and say, I remember when we started to see the shift in mediation to a more transactional place where we had moved away from the time it was taking to build relationship in mediation. And that was also around the same time when there was an uptick in community mediation centers, their relationship with the courts, because we had data that had to be collected and numbers that had to be met to prove that our services were necessary. But I'd like to just take a quick moment to talk about, and Teni-Ola, you walked me right in as well, the authority. And as civil rights mediators, it is my understanding, and is how I leverage, we are here because of Title 10. That is what gives us the authority. That part, not just the Civil Rights Act of 1964, but that Title 10 part. And so I'm just curious as to how each of you, and Teni-Ola, I know you've done extensive work, so I would like for you to kind of open the door with the foundation, if you don't mind. How do we lean into that Title 10 part? Because that goes back to the authority. That is where it lies. How do we leverage that? And then I know we have some questions in the chat, and I want to make sure we can pull those in too.
I can start off by just saying that people don't know that even people who do community mediation service work, like in centers, don't know that we have, got this authority through the Civil Rights Acts of 1964, title, the Section 10. One is just making sure people know that, but then also helping them understand what that meant as well, because when I was looking, I was like, so what does this mean? Does this mean that we got funding to do certain things in communities, and where do we get funding to do certain things, and why hasn't it sustained, or why did it sustain? And what I found out was that, 1964 Civil Rights Act occurred. You get this Title 10, you're in communities. They got the CRS, the Community Relations Services, as this like liaison from the government to the community. But then they needed people in community to be that kind of liaison between them. And so understanding how that worked and what that looked like, and then understanding that judicial reform came into play. And judicial reform coming into play, that's where that co-opting element came in, where they're like, we need some help from the people doing this kind of work over here. And so they commission them essentially, or hey, you take these cases, here's some funding for this. And then that kind of authority shifted into something else, because it was now, you were now this servicing agency or servicing organization for the government. And so just understanding how that shifted, why that shifted, and then also looking at sustainability overall. I had to really dig deep to think about, would you rather community mediation survive as a majority, service to the government, or not at all? And so just thinking about how that authority morphed, what is something that can be done to shift it back to community mediation centers or give them more power. I think that's kind of the biggest thing: awareness of what it is, and then really being mindful of how you can and should shift it back, because it's limiting people, it's limiting mediation centers from doing that community-based preventative work. And so I think that's the big thing of understanding it and amplifying it, and then going into the next steps, getting the stakeholders together so that they understand what that looks like and how they can shift it from their point, their level of leadership or positionality in it. So I'll say stop there.
And I would add in that, definitely funding is an issue for all nonprofits, right? And definitely for Community Mediation Center. I think the challenge and the caution is that the power is always with the people. And that is the authority of the people. And so for me, Community Mediation Center is so much about our volunteers stepping up and volunteering to do this work. And so many times our community mediation center was in threat of closing because the funding was shaky. And it was our volunteers who stepped up and went to our local leaders and said, we value this. So I want to say that community-based, of the people, for the people, is grassroots and it's bottom up. And if we lose sight of the bottom up and the voice of the people, we're in danger. So I think that we don't need to wait on anybody. But I think, like Teni is saying, we have to help people understand what's possible, and we have to find ways to relate and understand and help them communicate our message. And so I just want to put that piece in, because the authority is always got to be with the people, and it's going to take the people understanding what we can offer, so that then it becomes something that's valuable and meaningful to them.
Oh, absolutely, Sharice. And I appreciate the way you brought those things together. And what I'm hearing everyone saying without saying is that it's important to anchor yourself and your organization into your community. And when I say anchor, I don't just mean just be visible, which is a huge part, but it's not the only part. When we talk about how we show up and our authority, how we talk about what we do asserts that authority, right? When we inform them of our role. For the longest time, I talked about, mediation center. People only heard mediation. But when I start talking about our origins in that Civil Rights Act, suddenly so many other doors open, not just the courts. Suddenly, I'm a behavioral health service. Suddenly, I'm sitting on all of these boards. And what that did was give me leverage to find funding in other places. because it's there. It doesn't have to just be the court. So if we are taking control of that narrative and we're educating the community, we're empowering the community, and we're spreading that awareness, then we're truly anchored in, right? And then we can answer the question that I love to see is that, you know, if we can upscale our work because finances wasn't an issue, if you could unlimited funds, like what would you do to create a larger societal change?
I think that's a great segue into this next question here, because Heather said the mediation as a field has been encouraged to set and subscribe to standards of conduct largely framed around the legal landscape and often subscribed by the community mediation centers. One thing I've wondered about is when the common standard identifies prior relationships as the potential conflict of interest, it calls out Western US settler mindset of non-relationships can exist among people in order to maintain objective or neutral. And yet, as a practitioner, I see time and time again how important relationship is across all aspects for holding the process with trust. I wonder, with cultural humility from the cultural lens from our panelists, any thoughts about that? And so that would be, I'm assuming, and Heather, if you can just kind of make sure I'm saying this right, is that the, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read Bill's response and this question. So I think that you're mentioning is how do we stay connected to the relationship? Does anyone want to answer that? Teni-Ola, are you? Okay. Okay. Okay.
I'd like to,
You know, Jamila, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to just add another context to this question, and that's because in tribal communities, we don't have things like community mediation centers, you know, and so it's up to, as we use in our communities, we say that, you know, the people are the experts of their own problems. So they tell us what they need and how
Yes.
they want it to be developed. And so we use our resources to what I call indigenize processes so that it fits the culture, the language, the values of the community. And so our way of doing things is probably going to look much different than you know, the larger society. Now, when it comes to child welfare and disputes in the court, that makes it really difficult because they're using Western systems, and the people aren't really able to relate to that. And so what we're trying to do is try to bring those processes back into the community, indigenize the process so that it makes more sense to the families and the individuals involved.
Thank you for not only answering this question, but also reflecting on how important it is to realize that we are the community and the community is going to be diverse. And so everyone's going to do this as it pertains and respects their community.
Yeah, I when she said that, it also brought me that when I mentioned this in my research about decolonizing to decenter what was like the Western or that something that's not appropriate for the situation, and then to insert the culturally appropriate thing, which is the indigenizing element. And that's what I live and die by, because that's what's going to be sustainable. You will never be able to sustain something in a community if it's based on someone else's cultural perspective or cultural landscape, all those things. It has to be rooted in community, which is based on their culture. And so I think that that's the only way to keep these relationships going. And then another thing is to request that perspective from community, like have these community assessments and sit down with key stakeholders in communities, not just the people who are giving the money, not just the people who are giving certain resources, but people who have relationships with people, elders, people who can carry, bring the legacy in and all those things. And I just think that not a lot of people are bringing those multiple perspectives into to spaces, and they don't have the time, they don't have the resources to do that, but it's just necessary if you're seriously trying to sustain the work and make it community based.
And that's what makes it, with all of our comments really point to, that's how we are in right relationship with our communities. And that's how we have an ethical relationship to those we share. We have some responsibilities. And I think that's really the power of all of our community-based approaches to this work.
I know, Bill, that you just jumped in, and Mia, I know you wanted to say something, but I really want to make sure that we look at Mary Ann's comment, because I think it speaks to what we've been saying kind of individually, but it would be nice to kind of pull it in to make sure that Mary Ann feels like she was heard and that she walks away feeling like she has got a grasp on the work that she is doing. And I also want to speak, Mary Ann, to you and say, I don't think there's a wrong way that we can do this work when we approach this work with an open mind and a heart to be present, not as the authority, but as the vehicle to help move the conflict forward. So I just wanted to share that from my own perspective. But what she states is, how can we actively engage in bridging the gap between Western, open parentheses, court, for example, close parentheses, and the distinct dispute resolution methods of a variety of culture, excuse me. And she goes on to give a little preface that says, in her center, they practice traditional mediation. And I'm going to add my own little 2 cents there and say, I guess this traditional mediation would be transactional. A resolution, a conflict is there, and we're trying to get to a resolution, a win-win situation, and has begun more listening circles in some cases. So I guess we're going to open that up. And Jen, you've been kind of quiet, but I'd love to hear from you, because you're doing this kind of work in a different kind of way. So how do we bridge the gap?
I think it is really important that we focus on the shared values that we have and then figuring out how we move in that direction. And it's one relationship at a time. I like to refer to as co-conspirators, and finding those people within the different systems to be able to have those conversations so that we can move towards creating those spaces of belonging.
Oh my, thank you all. This has been so robust and so engaging for me to sit and watch and listen and hear, to listen deeply, right? With my eyes, my ears, and my heart, perhaps. I'm feel enriched for the day, and I know I have so much to learn from each of you. So Teni-Ola, Charisse, Jen, Nadine, and Kee, thank you for sharing your perspectives. Just want to close today by thanking Stanford, the Program on Dispute Resolution, NAFCM, and our partners at JAMS and the Mershon Center. And I want to leave it to Mia and Jamila to have the last 30 seconds to highlight their takeaways from this conversation today. Mia, you're off mute. Would you like to start?
Well, yeah, I was just typing in the chat that, no worries, Jamila. I was actually going to do the same thing. I wanted to make sure that we didn't leave that question unanswered. I just want to say, for me, my takeaway in listening to everyone share their stories and experiences is that I love how common it is. I love how even though the paths may look different, we are all talking about community. We're all talking about listening. We're all talking about that belonging and finding our role and helping our communities be what we see is missing, right? Because it's different everywhere. But being grounded and even being aware of what's missing, being aware of what's needed is what I hear coming from everyone. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your experiences with that and giving some really practical and realistic examples of what it looks like when you're really practicing and living that out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We had about 89 people, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with the networks and the resources that are available. And so because I do this work and I believe in this work, I am going to, without shame, do a plug now and say, you mentioned, Kee, that there's only 1%, or maybe that was Nadine, and that's unacceptable because this nation is way too big, this land is way too large, and we're all doing the work. But I don't see you at the Trust Network, and I'd love to see you at the Trust Network because I'd love for you to be part of our Trust Plus partners. I'd love for you to be a member of NAFCM so that you could have access to those resources because Teni-Ola, you mentioned that the only way for us to stay out of the court systems is we can pull our resources together so that we can keep our centers funded. But we can't lift this boat by ourselves. It has to be one lift at one time, and we're only going to do that if we collectively come together in our differences, united to say, hey, we're all calling it by a different name, but it's still peace work. And this work is the work of the people in community. And so I really would, I ask that you come to the meeting, that you become a part, and that you invite us to your meeting so that we can be a part, because this is not one-sided. We have resources available on each side. We just need to know, and if we don't open our mouths, we won't get fed. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you all. It's been a lovely afternoon to spend with you, and I'm grateful for each of your voices in this conversation. I look forward to seeing all of you really soon, and hopefully all of you on the webinar will connect down the road. Have a great afternoon, and I wish you the best in all the work and conflict and peace that you're doing around the country and elsewhere.